All right. So good morning on the West Coast, Central Mountain. Good afternoon to all our East Coast peoples out there. I'm just really excited to have our fourth LinkedIn Live. I think that's number four, right? Started in January.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I'm really excited to get in today. Anwar Jill with Bridge Equity, partnering with Jill and some of the work. And we're doing this because we have a great affinity for leaders, a lot of the leaders that we support. We want to just continue to keep providing resources to folks out there through this platform. I'm just going to hand it off to Jill to add on anything to that.
Jill Dunchick Consulting. I'm Jill. Work together with Anwar through Echelon Leadership Retreats and these LinkedIn Lives and Echelon School Studies. So some of you we will see next week in Atlanta in our second Echelon School Study. Very excited for that next Thursday, April
Mhm.
13th. And Echelon Leadership Retreats. We've been signing up our schools and doing our first calls for some of our schools this summer. So it's getting to that really exciting time for Anwar and I where we're working together a lot. So excited to put this information out there for y'all today. And if you like what you see and the way we work together, definitely contact us for the ways in which we can support y'all.
All right, so we're going to dig right into it. Again, just getting the Google presentation set up. But yeah, one of the things is a leader that this is a special time of the year. A lot of course, testing is happening, hiring, but a lot of things for the current school year is pretty much baked. And this is the time that as school leaders, we start thinking about what are we going to do for summer? How are we going to set up to be even better in the upcoming school year? So the LinkedIn Live topic of today is getting ready for summer 23 to just have a great 23-24 school year. A lot of the stuff folks are probably already doing, but just a quick refresher on some things you can do to set yourself up for the upcoming school year. First, we just want to lead with our mission. We work with school leaders and leadership teams for cohesion and maximize group effectiveness in service of academic achievement and equity. That's behind all of our work. That's behind the work that we do with all of our partners. We just want to ground ourselves in our collective mission. So, the first thing that we wanted to talk about in regards to setting up for the upcoming school year is vision and goals, right? You got to have a vision that you can collect, you can bring people to the table to walk in the same direction to create that cohesion. Because if that vision isn't there, folks might have different definitions on what they're trying to do at a school building. So the first thing is make sure your vision is set. Some schools have a prearranged vision. Sometimes you could create a yearly vision or a yearly theme to guide and focus people. One of the things that worked best for me when I became a new principal at a school, I did a learning tour, spoke with community members, spoke with teachers, spoke with students, and identified community excellence and commitment as three goals that the school community at large wanted to see more prevalent in schools to keep reaching our goals. So I use that goal and that theme to speak about everything that was part of the school, whether we had to stay longer, whether we had to do extra support for students, whether we had to create this new initiative to get our reading data up, to get our math data up. Using that vision and that theme really helped me communicate. So it wasn't about me just telling folks what to do as a school leader, getting more people invested in this common theme and goal. The second thing that we want to bring up is academic goals. You might not have your state test data, but you don't need that data to make a specific goal. There's a lot of interim assessments that schools take with a map, iReady, et cetera. But thinking about what academic goals do I want to see? What percentage increase do I want to see? Do I want to see growth increase by 10, students not being proficient reduced by a specific percentage point, but have that ready and use that to guide the work that you're doing. Then student culture goals. Say you want to decrease time out of classroom. Say you want to have more social emotional learning opportunities for students. Define what that is and what you're working towards as well. Adult culture goals. Do you want to have more teachers stay? Do you want to get better feedback on end of the year surveys or different surveys that you might have throughout the year? Just having that defined will be helpful in planning to what you're going to do to actually meet those goals. And finally, and I think sometimes it might be left out, but family and community goals. What specific things do you want to do to support your communities, your families? Is there specific initiatives that you want to put in place to educate them, to support them? Focus groups to get their thoughts, different surveys, and it doesn't have to be the normal state or district survey that's given out to every single school. It could potentially be something that you want your parents to fill out so they can give you information on what your school is doing and how they're supporting the community, but some goals based on that data that you get back to ensure that everybody's moving in the right direction. Jill, anything to add on that based on your experience and some of your work with school leaders?
I would say just based on the timing of this LinkedIn Live and depending on where you are in the country or where you are in the world and what your school calendar is, um, I think you used the term we're already baked. You know, we're baked at this point in the year. I think it is important to just kind of close out your academic goals from last year as you're reestablishing your current academic goals, and similar with your student culture goals and your adult culture goals and your family and community goals. And so, just taking that pause to close out last year and reestablish what is going to be the goal for next year, I think is really important to take that step. And the last thing would be, um, because the title is getting ready for summer, and you are doing an annual vision, an annual goal setting, being crystal clear about what are the steps and the goals for your summer PD and your summer interactions with your staff, your leaders, and your students, over the summer as it relates to your larger vision and goals. So once you get your annual on your vision and your goals, really isolate out summer speaking what those are for you and your team.
Thank you,
That was it.
Jill.
Yep.
Um, and then the next thing that we want to do now, you have your goals. You know what you're attempting to achieve in the upcoming school year. Then how are you actually going to do that? And I think a critical part of that is clearly defining roles and responsibilities. So who's on your leadership team? What are they going to do? How is it connected to the specific goals and vision that you have for the school? But clarifying that with yourself as a school leader and also with your leadership team so they know exactly what they're going into the upcoming school year to do. Sometimes it's difficult to do it so far in advance, but as much as possible, let folks know. So this is what's expected of you. This is what you're going to get into. And then as a leader, hold yourself accountable to making sure that's true as much as possible throughout the school year. And then once those roles are clarified, draft responsibilities and discuss with the leadership team. So, what are the specific responsibilities for each person within the leadership team? Who's going to coach who? How many folks are they going to coach? Who's going to be in charge of this culture piece? Who's going to be in charge of math, ELA, etc.? But really making sure that there's clear responsibilities that's drafted and then discuss with the team, right? Maybe they say, hey, this is something I actually want to work on this year. One example, I had a former leader who was really focused on math, and I just plugged him into all the math roles, but drafted it out, let him discuss. It's like, you know what? I want to dig into my ELA side and get an opportunity to coach some ELA teachers. So that was something that we had the opportunity to discuss, and also an opportunity to build his toolkit in terms of coaching teachers. So just something to consider. And then the last thing we wanted to bring up is MOCA. I'm not sure some folks have heard of it, but it's through the Management Center. It's a resource that really supports how to divvy up responsibilities and project management. This is just an example of how you can clarify resources. And let me just share this tab instead. So using this MOCA framework, manager, owner, consultant, helper approval, you can clarify responsibilities to support different to support your team. And this is through the Management Center. We'll put the link in the chat. But it's a great tool that I used and really helped me be able to engage all members of our team and also make sure that had that cohesion that's necessary when trying to build a great school. We have another resource as well. We have here Together Project Manager. I'm sure many of you might have heard of the Together Teacher, the Together Leader. The Together Project Manager is another resource that book $10, but it could help you manage different projects that are coming up. Or it might be a resource that you might want to give to someone on your team that has to manage specific projects, whether it's a instruction leader, operations leader, culture leader, but really helps folks to manage different projects. And we'll put all those resources within a chat so you have access to it um, later. Again, just want to kick it to you, Jill. Anything else you want to add on to that?
I think I just right before this, I was working with a director of ops, a leader, and the messaging from that coaching session seems very relevant here. Um, that ops team is operating at about, I think, 70% human capacity, meaning they have vacancies. And I think that's pretty normal across many of the schools that I'm working with. There are significant vacancies that you guys have all been, you folks have all been really doing a great job of managing and holding your organizations together in the realm of having multiple vacancies. And so in this session, we really just took a step back to say, what are our actual job titles? And what is the work that these folks have actually been doing? And is there a place for the remainder of the school year where we redefine titles and responsibilities and similarly um, rebuild the org chart for 23-24, in this case specifically to ops? And so if you are a school, whether it's ops or in your teachers or in your leadership team, that you've been operating at under 75% capacity, human capacity, all year, I would highly recommend going to a coffee shop, taking a step away from the building to do this work, because you may find yourself that you're just too ingrained in it and too ingrained in the band-aiding of roles and responsibilities right now. So that step away, it'd be really helpful for you as the leader to get away from the this is how we're doing it because, and this is how we want to do it if we are at full capacity. Um, so just thought that was some insight I wanted to share with everyone, knowing that vacancies has been something that most of the folks I'm working with are managing and leading through in some really quite beautiful ways.
Yeah, and I think all of that was great. I want to pinpoint the idea of stepping away from the building, because once you're in it, things could pop in. You so many different things can get into your head around what's happening right now. Might be hard to look at what it might look like in the future. So I've done that a few times, and I think that's a great idea. If you're going to have these conversations, you're going to start planning and thinking about it. Take an opportunity, step out of the building, go to the coffee shop, block some time out on your calendar. It's cool. Like the school will be fine. Everything will be good. But yeah, I think that's a great recommendation. So thanks for adding that, Jill. And next, I want to talk about professional development, something that I'm really excited about. My organization, Bridge Equity, focuses on professional development. But thinking about what is that plan going to look like prior to getting to the summer, right? So you have some plan to be very thoughtful in how to roll it out, what's going to be in your professional development, what to revise from the previous year. So folks like, yo, we did this last year. But I think thinking about what that professional development is extremely important. So that includes drafting summer professional development. If you're a school that has 2 days or your school that has 2 weeks, what does that time look like? The reason why that's important is because when you do it earlier, you could bring more people in to developing the school community, right? Say if there's a teacher that's real solid at engaging students, you're like, you know what, I want this teacher to do a professional development. If you tell them in the summertime, they might not be able to check their emails. If you tell them once they get back on site, it might be tough for them to develop a quality professional develop experience for others. But if you give them a heads up prior to the school year ending, then they have the time to think it through, plan out their summer, and really be invested in that professional development session. So I would say drafting that professional development early is important because then you can identify owners. If something doesn't work out, you could shift it someplace, because maximizing that time before students get in is what's really going to set the school up for success. Depending on where schools are at, some schools are a well-oiled machine, so it might not be that critical to their success. But for some schools that might have a lot of turnover, might have some different changes, leadership, teachers, that time in the summer is very, very important. And then I would also say this is a time to share development opportunities for your teachers and leaders, right? Whether there's conferences over the summer, whether there's different things that are popping up that teachers could get involved in. Like a lot of that stuff is out now. Sometimes if you start looking into it in June, July, it might be sold out. You might say, oh, I missed it. I'll do it next year. But using this time right now to think what's out there, how can I support my team to get better? And what are the resources that I could use to help my team get better? And anything on that one, Jill?
I have two thoughts coming in on this one. The first one is in our retreats last summer, um, one of our schools was working on the leader's role in training the teachers for IPP prep. And so part of what came out of that 2 day echelon leadership retreat was a PowerPoint deck and subsequent teacher worksheet that was about 50% finished. And I actually pulled up that PowerPoint deck, thank you, Noah, and shared it with two schools this past week that are struggling to get um, solid leader feedback to their schools in on the IPP/exemplar creation that the teachers are doing. And so just wanted to name that one, that it was something that we did directly focus on supporting in the retreats last summer, and really useful output came from that. And the second thing is, if you don't currently, as a school leader or an instructional leadership team, have a template for planning, meaning every session that gets run in our summer PD, no matter who is running it, they will address these 5 key points, motivation, empowerment, practice, etc., whatever it is. If you don't currently have that, I know I have a tool that I'm going to drop in the chat. And then Anwar, if you've got anything from Bridge that you would want to share, to drop it in the chat in terms of what we believe leaders should do, so that every session, no matter who's delivering it, feels like it's part of your organization. Like, this is how we do PD. And I think on top of that, I don't know that either Anwar or I offer this as a service directly written on our websites, but I think it is something that, if you don't have that, could be a one-off call with either one of us, so that we can share our tool with you and you have something that you then share with your team to at least get this part of your PD cohesive. So I think there's a big opportunity here for y'all if you don't have a template that all of your leaders use to prep PD. And this is a place where we could provide a one-off 1 or 2 call support to get you guys at least that lift.
Thank you, Jill.
Yep.
And then from professional development, setting up teachers and folks in the building, next step is setting up the community, right? Setting up students, setting up new staff. So summer assignments, I know it's a beast. I know sometimes students don't do it, but parents really rely on those summer assignments to hold some kids accountable over the summer. So making sure that's, and sorry, my son is he's yelling right now, but he's in the background. But making sure that those summer assignments and what the expectation is ready for students and also for teachers. Sometimes you might, you know what, we're really digging into a specific issue. I want teachers to read this text over the summertime to set them up for PD. Getting that ready, making sure the books are ordered, making sure it's ready for when teachers leave. All right, Warren. Making sure it's ready for when teachers leave, but make sure those summer assignments are clear and ready. All the ordering is done, because a lot of folks might be ordering the same schools from schools and it might run out. So you just want to stay on top of that. I think new staff, It's for some schools, it's a very competitive environment for good teachers. You want to make sure that you're interacting with them and engaging with them throughout the summer to create that connection between the school and them, especially if they're coming in from somewhere else, because you never know. They might have another interview or something lined up or just accepted the job and are waiting on something else. But use that as an opportunity to build relationships early to make sure once that summer PD hits, or once teachers come back, you're not like, wait, where are they at? And you get that email the morning of, like, actually, I'm not going to be at this school. So sometimes nothing can stop that from happening. But if you engage folks, create that connection between the school and them, sometimes you can limit that. And then new students, you're going to have new students in. You might want to bring some in, let them know what the culture of the building is, feel them and make them feel a part of the school. So when they come in, they're just ready to go. There'll be some points of discomfort. I went to many schools as a youngster and felt discomfort, but those schools that reached out to me and brought me in and had orientations made me feel much better when I started school. And I think that's one thing to really commit to. And then lastly, equitable supports. We have a diverse group of students within each school, and some students might need a different type of support over the summertime. This is a time where if you have a team of folks at the school that potentially could visit some students, um, offer some support to students that might not have it at home. If you know that some students are really depend on the connection between themselves and the school, you know, visits, phone calls, etc. And a lot of these things are set up, but just really being conscious of that as you plan supports over the summertime, because you know when they leave, they're gone for a couple months if there's no summer school. But a lot of students who might not know use a school for a lot of resources. So thinking around how can you keep our students that need it the most engaged, and set up so when they come back, they're ready to go, and they're still on that track to success as they were when they were in the school building. And Jill, anything on that piece?
I think the piece that that most speaks to me, or that I just want to add some insight to, is the new staff piece. Um, in working with leaders, I've always talked to them about a pre-summer PD, and so I think you mentioned some of these things, Anwar. So I think that might be redundant, but just want to name it. And what I would, for me, pre-summer PD, I would coach all my school leaders to say, you're doing all this hiring somewhere between January and probably the day of, right? Or the day before has been very real the last few years. But for the folks that come onto your team in January, you want to get them in a structure and you want to get them meeting the new people. So what I always tell people is, depending on when your school year ends, um, May 15th, you want your first virtual event for all your hired folks that are going to be new for next year. And then June 15th, you want your second virtual event for all new folks that are going to be hired. And ideally, somewhere between June 15th and the start of summer PD, you can have one in-person event where all new staff are invited. And most of my leaders will back that on their new family barbecue or something. So at that point, you've got 3 touch points with this person, ideally, who said they've been coming since January. And that hopefully reduces the number of surprises you have on day one of staff showing up. So you, as the leader, now calendar these things, and then you have them in there to do them. And it's more systematized than just, oh, I have to check in with this person because I hired them 2 weeks ago. I have to check in with this person because I hired them 4 months ago. You've got these things calendared, and they're small group, so they're a little bit more doable. And the other thing I like to highlight with your new staff, make sure before the first virtual session that they have read, that you've given them something about your community and where your school exists, so that they are rooted in your community in ways that are meaningful to the work. Make sure that they have been given excerpts or access to texts that you have used to motivate your team in the past, so that they are, again, getting grounded in the vibration of the current, what currently motivates the team. And the third piece is to make sure that you're actually giving them something from what they're responsible to do. Meaning, if you have someone coming in to teach 7th grade ELA, they are reading one of the seventh grade ELA texts and potentially coming up with some comp questions, or analyzing the lesson plan that you give them around that book, so that you have three real world bullet points on how well this person approaches your team. And it'll give you insight into what you're going to need to build in coaching plans before they ever step into summer PD. So that's just my insight on getting new staff on in an organized way, and in a way that roots them deeply where you are and in the work.
Yeah, thanks,
Um,
Jill. No, I was just going to say I appreciate the specificity, especially May 15th, June 15th, one in-person touch point, and also connecting that to like a family event. I like how, because that'll really help folks if there is there as they're planning, like, okay, when can or when should this happen? So thank you for adding that in. And then lastly, wanted to talk about closing out with grace. You know, there's end of the year events that you have with staff, and it's always a good time for folks to get together and just, but planning that as well could be something, because a lot of spaces and a lot of things, a lot of schools are doing it potentially in your area, especially if you're in a place that has a dense amount of schools. So just starting to plan that stuff out ahead of time so you get a count and get it on people's calendars. So, just folks know what's happening, because depending on childcare and different things, they might have to make some adjustments. And then just respect the work of others. Some folks might not be continuing on in the next school year. It might have been a rough experience, on both sides in that working relationship. However, it means a lot when other people see that everyone that stepped foot, everyone that came to work, everyone that put in that work with students are closed out with grace and with respect. So, it might be tough at times based on private conversations that not everyone might have seen, or private things that everyone might not have known about. But that showing of grace and respect for those who are doing different things, whether they left on their own accord or not, whether they left happily or unhappily. But closing out with grace is important, and I think it builds culture and builds like empathy and respect in the community. So that's one thing that can be tough at times, but as a leader, I think it's important to do. And Jill, just want to kick it back to you, because I know this is something that we spoke a little bit about, in preparation for this LinkedIn Live.
yeah, I think this is sort of one of those moments. I think you covered it beautifully. And as you were speaking, the quote that was going through my head is the closing of the ending of the famous Maya Angelou quote, like, people will never forget how you made them feel. And this is your moment to end potentially your work with folks, holding deep compassion for the fact that they were doing the best that they could, and believing fully that everyone was bringing the best that they could at that moment, given everything that they were juggling in their lives. So holding compassion if the best that was showing up at the workspace wasn't enough for what you need to drive your team and your students to where you need them to go. And so it's hold that compassion and um, deep integrity in closing out with grace.
And then also it's even if it might have been a tough experience, anytime, joy always brings joy, right? So if you enjoy it, for it'll bring joy to you, and that might help you get closure in that relationship if it was a tough one for you as a leader as well, right? Because it works both ways. As leaders, we go through that stress as well when
Yep.
we're dealing with tough conversations. So ending with joy is not only good for them but good for you as well.
Yeah, there are several people that I had to manage or lead that I'm like, man, if we could just hang out, things would be great. But like, we got to lead, and so like, there's always loving people for who they are, and being true to who I am as a leader and my mission. But loving people and really appreciating them for who they are, I think it's actually really fun for me this time of year.
All right, we're going to close out with a quick plug. We have our leadership retreats coming up. We have a few schools that we're working with. We've already started our calls and getting to know what's going on in the school buildings. And that experience has just been pretty cool to do, with new situations, new schools, meeting new people, seeing the different challenges and also the different strengths that they're bringing to it. So if you're interested in the leadership retreat, they're filling up fast. Feel free to reach out to us. We can schedule a call, let you in and see what's going on with it. And then second, our school study. This is going to be our last one for this school year, but really excited to head out to Atlanta next Thursday. We're going to be at Ethos in Atlanta, and just opportunity for folks to see a great startup school, great culture, great operations, great instruction going on at Ethos. But yeah, Jill, with that, I'm going to kick it back to you. I'm going to let you know I didn't charge my computer, so my battery's on like a little bit. So if I leave,
If you
that's
go,
the reason why.
it's not a. I think the only other plug I would make is this is the first summer where we're doing leadership retreat. We have historically done them at schools on the school campus, and we had a request, and we've been able to put it together for a retreat to take place in a city, in a hotel. So if you're wanting to do a retreat, but you're also not wanting to do it on your school site, we are traveling this year to cities that are not, school site based. So if that's something you were interested in, um, and or you have a retreat planned and want our supports, we are doing that this year. Other than that, good to see you, Chris. I don't know how long ago that message just popped up on our my side of the restream here. So we will see you all next month for our final LinkedIn Live of the school year. And then we'll close up until we have opening up again in September with LinkedIn Lives.
All right. Thank you very much. Check with you later, Jill.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.